The Myst series. This was a very landmark series. It turned gaming on its head in a good way. It introduced us to a world unlike any other, where you could travel between them by just touching a picture in a book. And it's ironic that this franchise has a collective total of 10 entries. Now, you have, of course, the 5 games that made up the Myst series: Myst, Riven, Exile, Revelation, End of Ages. But there was also an offshoot game, stated to be set in the worlds of Myst, but it also continues the storyline in the series. It's a bridge of sorts, and that is Uru. But then you actually have 3 more entries into it. The 3 books that were co-written by Rand Miller. So this is really a fully immersive world. And the books were one of those early in-game canon. And most books you will see out there that are based off games can be loosely considered canon, unless the company officially backs them. This was, with Rand Miller having a hand in the books, it does add to the storyline of the series. Now, you have to know that when the books came out, I believe only two of the games had come out at this time. But if you want to get a good timeline of it, I would suggest to do it in a certain order. The tricky part is, of course, getting the books, although there is an omnibus out there of the 3 books. But the storyline really does, the books do help with the story of the series and explain the backstory of the first 2 games as well. And so we have the first book. Well, actually, the second book released, which is the Book of Tiana. And in it, we have a young woman named Anna, who lived in a cleft with her father. They were like archaeologists. And while they were there, something odd happened not too long ago, which adds to the story of the series. The Dunny are working on a vast system of tunnels and caverns, and one such item was the Great Shaft. And so, our world and the Dunny were set to collide. And it appears that Tiana appears at a time when there was some unrest between the young generation and the older generation. And they were dealing with someone who was in their group that was a bit egotistical. Mad, you may even say. Now, in the course of the story, we have Anna, now being called Tiana by the Dunny, sort of falls in love with a man named Atris, spelled a little bit differently from Atris in that we know in the series. I believe they spelled his name, this one, uh, which is Aetrus's grandfather. They spelled his name Aetrus. And of course, they get married. They do have a son, that's Gen. But the unrest is happening. Some want to blame her. But no, there is a virus now going about. Something that is destroying ages. And in the end, the person who is truly behind all the chaos, a villainous person that they had somehow imprisoned in a prison type age, somehow got out. And he had made a demand. You see, the art, writing worlds and linking books to worlds, it is one of their most sacred abilities, one of their most sacred techniques. And the people who wielded this knack lived by one rule. You are linking to existing ages. You are linking to existing worlds. You are not creating them from scratch. Which means everything they write, they are linking to something that exists somewhere in the known multiverse. Yes, small changes can maybe connect you to a different time in that era or something else. But it is one of the foremost tenets. And so, Atrus the Elder entraps this villain, in a world that was going to kill the man. It was a one-way trip. It was a suicide mission, so that some of the Dunny could survive. And that is the Book of Tiana. Now, that's just a brief thing. I do suggest you read it, because I read it so many years ago. After that is the Book of Atrus, which was the first book released. And in it, we see Atrus growing up, being raised by his grandmother, as his father left him there, because he couldn't be bothered to raise a child. His father is bitter, and not as stable as... he's not stable mentally. Something we already knew if you played Riven. So Atrus is learning from his grandmother until Gen returns to take Atrus with him to explore what remains of Dunny. Gen is, however, too obsessed with being thought of as a god, and hence Atrus finds a way to slowly stabilize the age. Slight changes, I guess, do have that effect. But it does not do everything to, quote, save the age. This age will still collapse. Atrus meets Catherine there, and eventually, in an effort to trap Gen in this world, they do it and escape. Now that's a brief synopsis of this book, because Atreus first is glad to be accepted back by his father. His father shows him the art, shows him how it affects things, and then when his father gets rid of certain things, Atreus returns to a world where no one recognizes him. And then we start seeing that Atreus thinks his father is not as stable as he first thought. And that is basically all part of the story. It's the story of how Atreus and Gen got at odds. How Gen ended up trapped in Riven, or as he had called it, the Fifth Age. At the end of Myst, we do see the very words that begin the first game. And we see Atreus and Catherine living on the Isle of Myst with their two young children, Cirrus and Achenar. Now, before I go into the main games, I do want to mention an entry that would have been official if it had completed. And you'd have to be a real collector to find it out there. Dark Horse Comics had won a bid to produce a Myst comic book. And it would be part of the backstory of Cirrus and Achenar. It was called Myst, or Book of the Black Sails, or Black Ships, one of the two. And it had the potential to be a good thing, except they made a key mistake. They basically switched the brothers. It was always figured that Cirrus was on the slenderer side, and Achenar was on the more stocky side. But the mistake was already published, and Rand wanted it fixed. Well, they both wanted it fixed. Rand and Robin wanted it fixed. They didn't want to do it. They did not want to fix it. They thought they had more. Dark Horse's writers thought they had more, control over things. And Dark Horse lost the project. Only one issue was ever released. So it's an incomplete story. I can only imagine that had Dark Horse given, gave in, admitted their mistake, they could have continued it, but they didn't. And so then we move on to Myst, where our mysterious stranger finds the linking book somewhere. A book that survived falling through apparently space and landed somewhere on Earth. It is supposed. Where you are brought to an island that is deserted, with two, quote, books in a library and a shelf full of mostly destroyed books. Where you find out that each of the brothers have gotten trapped in what appears to be prison books. The way a prison book worked was that you link with it, and you end up in a trap age. only one person can go to. And the only way for the trapped person to get out is if someone else, links in. Now, each of the brothers are begging you to get the pages, to fix the books, and then get released back out into the world. Both are not stable. They urge you not to, quote, go after the book that Atris is linked into, which is actually Kavir, a linking book to Kavir, but he can't get back to Myst. So in the course of the game, you get those. Then you don't listen to the brothers. You get the page that will allow Atris to leave Kavir and link back to Myst. And when you do that, Atris apparently destroys the trap books, prison books, whatever you want to call them, and gives you the island for your free travels. When they did Real Myst, they actually created another age called Rime that you could visit, and there you could get a viewing port to see Riven. Kind of a nice thing. Of course, this was after Riven had been released, of course. Afterwards, although at the end of Myst, he does tell you he may have another task for you. And so, sometime later, Atris calls you to help him rescue his wife Catherine, who has gotten trapped in the Fifth Age, Riven. Obviously, he can't send you with a linking book back. So it is up to you to go to Riven, figure out how to capture his father, how to rescue Catherine, and restore things. Well, signal him how to get out. It's a very destructive signal. Of course, you can be entranced, enamored by Gen's attitude, which would be a bad ending. You could fail to rescue Catherine, also would be a bad ending. But then you get to see the Starfisher again, as Atris lets the book fall, and of course you fall after it. Now, as it works out, you do reach that book. However, between the events of Riven and the next game, that is when the Book of Dunny is set, to which Atris is trying to restore Dunny. He goes checking ages, finding others, and slowly bringing them back, to which they decide that it may be time to, quote, explore or settle in a new age. Of course, there are trials and tribulations. You have some purists who figure Dunny is the greatest example of life out there and everybody else should aspire to be them. They sort of have a lower opinion of Atris after they find out he's not is not pure Dunny. And this is where we also see more of Atris's humanity, his decent side. His morals are good. And in the end, there is a war, there is a battle. Through the course of the story, we find out that Tian has passed away. And that possibly, I don't recall, eventually we do have events that are leading towards the Dunny that don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past and be better, agreeing to go with Atris and start a new world, so to speak. And this is in turn what leads us to exile. Atris and Catherine have had Yisha. Yisha's still a baby now. And Atris is proud of his newest accomplishment. In fact, he invites you to, you know, see everything that he's created. You are still the same person that was in the previous two games. The books will never address where this stranger is. And then a disaster happens as someone comes into the lab, links in, steals the new home book. Atris wants you to go after them to find the book, and you do. And you are, in turn, meet Saavedra. Saavedra was a person from one of these worlds that was linked to, and had agreed to help Atris in teaching his sons. And so they went to, he had created this place for his sons to learn. However, he did not know how corrupt his sons were, and he did lose track of the place due to his son's own actions and what else he was dealing with. So Saavedra had a very bitter feeling. So in the course of this game, you are traversing test stages that Atris had designed to help teach his children, his boys, ways of thinking. And some of these ages, I loved some of those ages. Especially the one that was a giant marble machine. That was a beauty. But as it played out, this man was tortured by the boys, left for dead. He somehow survived. And here he thought his whole world was destroyed, because he could never get past the barriers. So when you come along, solve the tests, get everything you need, and then travel into this last hub area, you have to, quote, convince the guy, sort of trap him, and then get the book back, because no other way will you get that book back. And then you allow him to rejoin his people. Give him hope. And that is the only way you truly beat him and get a good ending. Once that's done, you return back. You find out Atris couldn't follow because the fire that destroyed his office destroyed the linking book. So Saavedra's plan didn't work out as well as he had thought it would. Then after that, we move to Revelation, which shows a more teenage Yisha. You are still the stranger, but now you get to, fiddle with new toys. One of which is like a camera. So, that's something that didn't exist, say, in the early 1800s, one that works like this one did. As it plays out, you find out that Atris didn't destroy the prison ages. He had other, quote, linking books to them and set up little, quote, visiting posts, more at the assistance of Catherine. But he wanted to know if the boys had reformed. And that is why he calls the stranger again. Of course, disaster happens. He has to go straighten things out, leaving Yisha in your care. And then you find out part of the chaos was caused by the boys. Apparently, they found a way to break out. But you start getting signs that the boys are not as some things have changed about them. Cyrus has still gotten more and more disturbed. He hasn't changed. But Akinar has changed. He started feeling remorse. He overhunted and started feeling bad and started changing his ways. He didn't want to kill these creatures. Well, not the kind ones, at least. And so he learned and he got better. And finding out he had a little sister. Oh, he loved that. He cared for Yisha. It was enough to really get him into a better recovery. Cyrus, however, saw Yisha as an opportunity. And over the course of the game, you find out that Cyrus has gone as far as to, quote, take Yisha's place. All part of his plan. You see, Cyrus wanted to take Yisha's place and then learn from his father, and then kill his father. Akinar was not on board with it. He doesn't. In fact, Akinar makes a sacrifice to help save Yisha. I'll admit that's a lot for a little kid to take in. That's a lot for any kid to take in. Of course, with her rescued and returned back to Dunny, or to Atris and Catherine, almost seems like it's the end of the story. However, this is where Uru comes in. Uru is a bit of a bridge. You see, you meet up at the Clef in Utah. You are a new person. Apparently, Yisha has somehow sent word out to people to bring them to Dunny, and as you go around this volcano that is apparently in the west, you come across the remains of the telescope that looked into the star fissure and the structure that was over the star fissure. You even find the bones of a wark that somehow crashed into the desert. You then begin the journey in which you visit certain ages. You visit Dunny. You visit various ages, all of which is you explore to learn. You find your own Relto, an island in the sky. And that is your link point to the main story. And as you go through, you learn things. You get some ideas of what the Dunny were like. And you find out about what was called the Least, the Bajos. or the Bahro. So as you go through that, you learn about them. These creatures can warp in and out. And it was almost like they were subjugated by the Dunny. Something you learn more of in Myst 5. But after you do go through all this, by first hearing a holograph, seeing a holographic image of Yisha, when you go through and finish the journey, which you go through these ages, you find the claws of the journey claws to open the door, and then you claim each Bahro, and then you have to return each Bahro back to this central hub. Now, once you do that, you are returned to the clef, and it's raining. Rain in the desert, a miracle. And you meet Yisha. And this is your lead in to Myst 5, End of Ages. A way of introducing a new character into it. And then Yisha sets you on this task in 5 to free the tablet. But she also tells you do not give the tablet to her. The one who controls the tablet would basically control the Bahro. And would get the powers that go with the Dunny linking and all that. And so you go through, and this is really the first game where you really get to explore the Great Shaft, the linking point between our world and the subterranean world of Dunny. You can get a look at it through Uru online, but it's amazing. It gives you a feeling for how big this was. And when you go through that, and finally release the town, now you have an extra figure in there named Escher, played beautifully by David Ogden Stiers. And you get through all that, and you see more and more amazing worlds and how they were set up. And I swear, End of Ages has one of the most fantastical realms. It's breathtaking beyond breathtaking. And you finish by giving the tablet to the Bahro, which gives this. You then return to where the Dunny are now. Yisha congratulates you on doing what she couldn't. Atris thanks you again. You see that Atris has finally entered his elderly years, as he still thinks you are the same stranger that helped him long ago. And the thing is, that stranger was just a human with a normal human lifespan. No doubt that between Myst 4, Myst 5, or somewhere between Myst 4 and Uru, the stranger passed away. And End of Ages literally ends the series. I mean, we've seen in recent years Myst get re-released and re-released in new formats, utilizing new tools. And I'll be honest, purchasing an Oculus Rift is very tempting now, or one of those VR devices, because of Myst being VR now. Part of me would love to experience that. But you can't do that with limited funds. But as the story ends and plays out, um, it closes nicely with End of Ages. The Myst series in total probably took in the neighborhood of 15 years to fully complete, maybe more. 15, maybe 20. And it has such interesting lore in it. And it had some very redeemable villains in it. I talk Saavedro having a chance at redemption. We saw Akanar redeem himself. Even some that followed the real bads could be redeemed. And it had such a rich lore. And we have the books to thank for that lore, introducing us to this fantastic world. And the games can work as standalone, the games can work as a whole story. And it was one of the fine examples where you could integrate the books into the lore. It wasn't a spin off, it wasn't a what if. This was actual lore. Do you have to read the books to play the games? No. In fact, I would not be surprised if there were some Myst players who have never read the books. Maybe didn't even know about the books. And they did see re-release at some point as an omnibus, as I said. But I think a true Myst Series experience is to play the games and read the books. It is all part of a beautiful, beautiful journey, full of thought-provoking lore. You see a civilization fall and then rise from its ashes in its own time. You see a wondrous world where anything is possible, that lives that while it appears you are creators, you are only just bridging the gap. And I will admit that that own thought has crossed my mind several times, before and after I read the Myst books. That out there, all we watch, all we play, all we read, all we create is just merely windows to other worlds. Myst is a series that gets you to think of the metaphysical. When you truly get into it. And that makes it a great series. And it's no wonder that the first game has seen so many ports over its time. And I would hope that maybe in some time we'll see Riven get ported, maybe a new look, maybe do the same with Exile, the same with Revelation, maybe a new look to Uru, a smoother look to End of Ages. I think we'd all deserve that. And I will say that the series had some of the most beautiful game music I've heard in years. And I consider myself a bit of a connoisseur of video game music. Sometimes I am. That's all I'm going to say about the Myst series. Even my words now, I hope, did it some justice. Because it is very easy to fall short of praising such a beautiful series. As always, thank you for listening. And check out the other retrospectives and my playthroughs. Goodbye.